everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed. I am Matt Connarton. We're here for the television edition, and no jacket today. It's like spring outside, so I'm just wearing a short sleeve shirt, keeping it cool and comfortable, and it's glorious. It's like 70 something degrees out, so very, very happy. Thank you as always to John Hopwood for having me on Ward 13 earlier, and if you missed it, we just did you can check it out. It'll be up on YouTube later. We spent the hour chatting with Bonnie Wright, who is going to stick around with me for a few minutes too, to kind of update us on what's happening with the whole GMO legislation. And then after that, we'll cut Bonnie loose, and then we'll get into some politics, of course, as always. Another big day yesterday. We had a bunch of primaries: Michigan, Mississippi. Was that? Yeah, Mississippi, and there's a couple others, but Michigan particularly interesting. So we'll get to that later. But first, to my right is Bonnie Wright, once again returning. How are you, Bonnie?
I'm fine. Thank you so much.
What's the name of the organization again? It's Right to Know GMO, New Hampshire,
And
is that?
New Hampshire, Right to Know GMO.
I got a little dyslexic with it there.
That's
Okay.
all right.
And okay, so what's going on now? So we have this, and we talked about it on John's show, but I guess so. There's this bill to basically try to quash what they're doing in Vermont.
We got two bills going on right now in the U.S. Senate.
Okay.
One is S-2609, and that was introduced by Senator Pat Roberts.
Okay.
And we call that the DARK Act because it will D-A-R-K, Deny Americans the Right to Know. It's basically a voluntary labeling bill. It is ugly. Mm-hmm. It is going to, the reason for introducing this is to preempt state rights, violation of the 10th Amendment,
right?
Shut down states from being able to have their own labeling law.
And so Pat Roberts, and he's a Republican?
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about that is Republicans are supposed to be very pro states' rights. Mm-hmm. They're all about states' rights, but of course, as always, you got to follow the money. You know, I'm sure that if we were to look at who supports his, because what state is he from again?
Kansas.
So the agriculture lobby obviously has their fingers in his pie, no doubt. So
well, yes, the agriculture and the food manufacturers.
Yeah.
I did a research, which we didn't talk about on John's show, that he from 2009 to 2014 industries that would affect it, like the food and beverage, the grocery manufacturers, gave him over those from 2009 to 2014 over $700,000. Mm-hmm. So this.
And I say it all the time: follow the money. Whenever anything doesn't make sense, follow the money.
Yep.
So and this is a perfect example of that, which is what I always tell everybody. So, you know, here's a Republican. They're supposed to be for states' rights. He obviously is not in this case. Why? That doesn't make sense. Okay, follow the money. There you go. There's your answer. That's always, not just in politics, but with a lot of things in life, but especially in politics, that's always the answer.
Yeah,
so
he introduced this bill to the Senate Ag Committee, and they had a hearing on it. I think it was a week ago. Lost track of days. I think it was yesterday. 14 ayes, which were all Republicans, and 3 Dems, and 6 nays, which were the remaining Democrats.
Okay.
So it came out of committee. It will be going to the House floor.
Okay.
And if you don't feel a sense of urgency about it, you should.
Yeah.
If you care anything about the future of our food safety, because this is going to affect labeling or anything else you want. Mm-hmm. in regards to genetically engineered foods.
Yeah.
Need to stop it. Most likely it will come up tomorrow in the Senate. So today is the day to be calling our senators and saying,
Right.
One of the concerns is that it could come up for a cloture vote, and that could happen as early as Monday.
Okay.
And that would have to be passed by 60 of the 100 senators, and if that happens, then it would limit discussion and just basically move that bill forward.
Okay.
We need to block cloture. No cloture, no S-2609, the DARK Act.
Okay. And what was the other? You said there's 2 bills?
2 bills. The other one is S-2621, and that was put out by Senator Merkley of Oregon, Co-sponsors are Senator Leahy from Vermont, Tester from Montana, Feinstein from California, and Sanders from Vermont. We need to get behind this bill. We need to be asking our senators to support it. Senator Shaheen supported the other mandatory labeling bill in the Senate now, and we need to get her to support this one. And we need to ask Kelly Ayotte to try and support this if she can, but at least to block the Dark Act.
Yeah, we were talking to on John's show about Kelly Ayotte hasn't publicly taken a firm position on this, but you're optimistic that she may. Or
there's only a few Republicans that have.
Yeah.
But she's up for re-election. She knows that 90% of New Hampshire folks in several polls have said they want mandatory labeling. Nationally, 90% want labeling. It's on a national level, 89% Republicans, 93% Republicans, 93% Democrats.
Yeah.
So it's a very popular idea to have our food labeled.
Right.
And, you know, we would love to see a good, strong labeling law passed federally. If they can't do that, then allow us to do it on the state level.
Right.
Protect our 10th Amendment. And so those are the two. And then we also have Secretary of Agriculture of the USDA, Secretary Vilsack, is saying, let's go with a different idea. Let's call for mandatory labeling, but it's not the kind of mandatory labeling that we want. What he's suggesting is maybe something like an 800 number, so you can be in the store and you can say, I wonder if this has GMOs. Let me call this number.
Right.
Or here's a QR code, those little square blocks with the little squares in it, make a pattern.
Yeah.
You know, take your smartphone, scan it, and have that tell you if you know how to use, if you have a smartphone, know how to use it, you have internet connection, can get to the website through your smartphone, load the page, and then on the page they're proposing, and this does have the backing of the Grocery Manufacturers Association.
Yeah.
It would have a lot of information, including whether or not it's sustainably grown, or if it contains genetically engineered. There's probably some propaganda on the pages, and you would have to wade through it to find out the information that you want. We want 4 simple words. Processed with genetic engineering.
Yeah.
That has to be on the package. You want to put a QR code on it, that's great. We would love that.
Sure.
But not as the only solution.
So Vilsack, what he's proposing, because we touched on that a little bit on Ward 13 as well, is the idea that that's okay because, like, is the GMA, the Grocery Manufacturers Association, is that correct? Are they going along with that because their theory is no one's going to use it?
They're concerned that if we have the words processed with genetically engineered, it's going to scare people. They see it as skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
We see it as information. They see it as a threat.
Yeah.
They're afraid that if people see that, they're going to say, oh, well, we wouldn't have this on our food if there was nothing wrong with it. So they're concerned about that.
Yeah.
You know.
Which is pretty transparent. I mean, because the reality is, you know, most people don't read labels. The ones that do, obviously, they're going to do the research to, the ones who are concerned about this are going to do the research to determine whether this is a product that they think is safe for them or not. So their argument that putting that label on there, it's a pretty transparent argument, I think, you know, and so it's not hard to figure out what's really going on there. So, this bill, the second one, where are we with that?
With Senator Merkley's bill, the good mandatory bill.
Yeah.
It was just introduced a few days ago.
Okay.
We have the original 5 sponsors. We've picked up 2 more co-sponsors.
Okay.
I can't remember who one of them. It was this morning's email before I head out here.
Yeah.
I know Senator Kristen Gillibrand from New York was one of the co-sponsors.
Okay.
So I would love to see Senator Shaheen be a co-sponsor.
Yeah. And, the other thing, too, is now you had said that apparently, because I brought up on John's show that I think part of what is a challenge for folks like you who are working on this is bringing this issue to the forefront, because I watch all the debates. I don't hear anything about this. It's something where, as you were saying, 90% of people overwhelmingly are in favor of GMO labeling, and yet it's not talked about in the debates. There hasn't been one single question that I've seen. But actually, it has come up at the town halls, like the town halls Hillary Clinton was doing here in New Hampshire. You have seen it brought up. So there is some discussion, but it's like, I think the challenge for folks like you is, how do you get this to kind of that next level of the American consciousness where they're thinking about this issue? And John had pointed out that he didn't use this word, but I use the term a lot. I gotta look up who came up with it originally, because I didn't invent it. But corporatocracy, where you have the media controls what the questions are at the debates, and the media is part of the corporatocracy. You've got the media, you've got the corporations. Big media is all owned by the corporations, and they own our government. The corporations and the lobbyists and whatnot, and I don't know how you overcome that. I don't bring it up because I have a suggestion or a thought. It just seems to me like, from my vantage point, looking at what you're trying to do, that's a major challenge. It's almost like you've got to figure out a way to somehow force this into the dialogue on that level. Obviously, at a town hall meeting, or whatever you want to call it, one of these events where there's a Q&A going on, people are coming up and asking whatever questions they want. But I don't know, how do you get a question about this into the dialogue at a big media, a corporate media event?
Most of the networks ask for questions that you would like to have the candidates asked.
Yeah.
And I know a number of people have put in, we want to know about the GMOs. Where do the candidates stand? And it's been asked, but not asked to the candidates. We know that Bernie Sanders is supporting this Merkley bill as a sponsor. We have heard clips that Hillary has said, I support labeling. She also supports biotechnology, but she does support labeling. Senator Cruz has said he's opposed to it. I think you mentioned Donald Trump is...
Tom Massengale on John's show was saying that Trump actually supports labeling, which is interesting.
I hadn't heard that.
But you can't trust anything Trump says anyway.
Yeah.
He may have said that, and he may or may not have meant it.
Yeah. There was a big agriculture meeting in Iowa some time ago, and most of the Republican candidates were there, and almost all of them said there is no need for a labeling program.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why it's a partisan issue, because we all have to eat.
Well, I do understand why it's a partisan issue, because Republicans typically, their base position is they don't want government doing anything, other than killing people with bombs and making sure, you can't make reproductive choices. But other than that, they really don't want the government doing anything. So from their perspective, it's easy for them to say, no, we don't like this because it's one more thing the government would be telling you to do. So I can see where it becomes partisan. Although what's interesting is, it sounds like, I get the impression that here in New Hampshire, it's not that partisan, that a lot of Republicans have supported labeling. I know Gary, I also do rock, paper, hand grenades with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper, and he, I believe, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since we've talked about it, but you came on that show once. If I remember correctly, he supports labeling, and he's a pretty conservative guy.
Yeah.
So,
but he has health issues, and he makes the connection between that, which I can't give you a study that says these things are making us sick.
Right.
However, if you look at the United States and how our health concerns have gone up, how our use of the genetically engineered foods have gone up. Dr. Nancy Swanson did some beautiful work on that, comparing health and the use of genetically engineered foods and the associated chemicals.
Yeah.
I can't give you a study that says that
You can't prove it.
if I eat it,
Yeah.
I don't feel good.
Right.
My body knows, but I
Right.
can't give you a scientific study.
But ultimately, too, it's important for people to understand. You're not talking about banning GMOs.
No, we're
You're
not.
just talking about labeling. You're just knowledge. That's it.
And
You have a right to know.
Europe is way ahead of us. 64 countries across the world have labeling.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
We're the United States and Canada are the only two industrialized countries that do not have a labeling law.
Yeah.
We also have the most genetically engineered foods in our diet, and we also have declining health issues. And some of the health issues that humans are starting to experience, they're finding in some of the animals. And they're saying, oh, we don't trust that study because of this, they didn't do this, and the study just says further data is required and further study is required.
Right.
But the animals are getting sick, and
What diabetes specifically? I wonder?
diabetes
Because we've seen
is-
an explosion of that in humans.
diabetes,
incredible.
cancer.
Okay.
If you look at the incidence of cancer in children, how that has escalated.
Okay.
And I can't say that there's a connection.
Right.
My gut says there is.
Yeah.
But I can't give you proof that there is.
Right.
But until we haven't done any long-term studies.
Yeah.
One of the things they're finding with animals is digestive issues.
Really?
Look at what's happened with the digestive issues. Look at allergies and what's happened with allergies. Look at fertility issues. And in the animals, they're finding that they miscarry, that they can't conceive. Look at the number of fertility clinics that are starting to come up, that women are not able to get pregnant, or if they get pregnant, they're miscarrying.
Yeah.
I used to know nobody who had miscarriages. Now it's like you hear it all the time. I knew nobody growing up that was, under 60 that had breast cancer. But now I know a number of people,
Right.
My best friend's daughter was 29, stage 4 breast cancer.
Wow, that's young. Yeah.
And
That's
she
very
was
young
eating
for that.
healthy,
Yeah.
but somewhere along the line, something's going wrong with what we're either eating or putting into our bodies in some way, eating, breathing, drinking. Something's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Bonnie, before we let you go, so what do people need to know as far as we should definitely give the website again, and anything else you want people to know about in terms of how they can get involved?
Grab your pen. New Hampshire, Right to Know, GMO.org. NH, Right to Know, GMO.org.
Okay.
We're on Facebook with New Hampshire Right to Know, GMO. We're very active on Facebook. If you have questions, send me an email, info@nhrighttonowgmo.org. And the other things, we need to be calling our senators, and we need to put pressure on them, reject the DARK Act, support mandatory labeling as proposed by Merkley, not mandatory labeling as proposed by the Secretary of Vilsack.
Yeah.
Senator Ayott's number is 202-224-3324, and Senator Shaheen's number is 202-224-2841. I have both of their numbers on our website, and it's all over our Facebook page.
Okay.
So,
very good. One more thing, congratulations again on being elected to the zoning board in the town of Salem, New
in
Hampshire.
the town of Salem, thank you very much.
So that's great. How long is the term? Is it 2 years?
3 years.
Oh, 3 years.
Yep.
Oh, that's unusual for an odd number. Huh, okay. Well, it's a town. They do things different than the city.
But,
don't know.
working on this, I see that we have issues, federal, state, local level, and just would love to urge people to get involved.
Yeah.
You can't sit back and say something's wrong and not do something.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you were saying on John's show too that before you got into this, you kind of had that attitude
Stupid
that so
mentality.
many people have that put your head in the sand and somebody will fix it, and I always say the greatest threat to our liberty is apathy. And so this is great. Not only have you gotten involved in this, but now you hold public office, and Good
It's
for
a
you.
small public office.
No, but
it's
still,
just,
it counts. It counts. It's an elected position, right? People had
It
to vote
is.
for you. So,
Yep.
so that's great. So I'm happy for you. I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
So we'll cut you loose. Bonnie Wright, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
And we'll take a very quick break, and then we'll be back, and we'll talk some politics. You're on Unleashed. Everybody, welcome back. Thank you again to Bonnie Wright for sticking around for a bit. And let's see. So, big week in politics, of course. Another Tuesday, another Tuesday with some very important primaries. So we'll get into that. And I do want to remind everybody, of course, that Unleashed is, you can hear the radio edition of the show 5 nights a week at 11 p.m. Eastern, now on IPM Nation 2 at IPMNation.com. And Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're also on OTR FM. And we do, of course, archive not only all the radio shows on IPM Nation, but all of the television editions as well. We put them up on our IPM Nation YouTube page. We've got shows going all the way back to the beginning when we used to do the TV show at QCE News. So, and I got to see, I ran into Glenn R.J. Willett last week from QCE News and Willett at Large, and he's doing better. He's finally feeling better. He's up and about. So, good to see him. Good to see him doing better. He was kind of down for the count for a while there. So I am very curious. To me, one of the most interesting stories right now in politics, and I'm actually going to, I have a few things prepared, but I want to get online again really quick and just see if I can connect, if there's anything new on Marco Rubio. This is something that I'm watching very closely. I'm really curious to see what the Rubio campaign decides to do on their way to the Florida primary. And here's why. Marco Rubio at this point has not won a single contest. He hasn't won a primary or a caucus. And he, the next, really his only shot at winning anything is the Florida primary, which is next Tuesday of next week. And here's the thing. I am guessing that there is an ongoing dialogue within the Rubio campaign of whether to hang in there for Florida or to get out now. In fact, there's a story up on CNN. I just found it. I wanted to see if there was anything new on this. On CNN.com. It's actually from yesterday, but this looks like the newest thing. It says some Rubio advisors are saying to get out before Florida. Now, there's no sign from the campaign itself that that's what they intend to do. They seem to have a ground game operating in Florida. Florida, of course, Rubio's home state. So if there's one state he should be able to win a damn primary, and it's Florida, right? But the way I see it at this point, I think this is fair to say. Marco Rubio is not running for president in 2016 at this point. He's running for president in 2020 or in 2024. One might think, of course, he could be running for vice president. Actually, I said from the beginning, from when Marco Rubio got into this race, I said, yeah, he's not running for president. He's running for vice president. That's what I see when I look at Marco Rubio. I see a vice president. His father was a bartender, by the way. I don't know if you've heard him mention that. A little joke there. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any chance. I mean, look, he talked about Trump's hands talked about Trump having small hands and whatnot. I don't know if you can come back from that and have Trump pick you as his VP. So I think he's probably out of the Veep stakes because Trump is going to be the nominee. There is no clear path. I mean, it's not mathematically impossible for somebody else to get this away from Trump. but it's extremely unlikely. And there will not be a contested convention. That is my prediction. Now, I'll get back to that in a moment. I think all this talk about a floor fight and a contested convention or a brokered convention, although everyone's kind of gotten away from saying that because there are no brokers anymore. It doesn't really work that way. I don't think there's going to be a contested convention at all. So Rubio, he's running for 2020 or 2024. Maybe he'll try to become the Republican nominee in 2020 and challenge Hillary Rodham Clinton. Or maybe Trump will become president, but then decide to only serve one term because turns out he doesn't like the gig or whatever and doesn't run for re-election. More likely that Hillary is going to be the president. I've been predicting that all along, and I still think I'm right. But Marco Rubio, this is what I suspect is the calculus within the Marco Rubio campaign and within Rubio's own mind right now. How does he get out? What is his exit strategy for leaving the race without looking weak? Because he could, on the one hand, he could get out now and not risk losing in Florida, because even though Florida is his home state, he could still lose there. Trump is unstoppable, man. Trump is just, he won big yesterday. He won huge in Mississippi and Michigan. Trump might actually win Florida. If Marco Rubio can't even win his home state, he looks bad. He's got to get out of this looking strong for 2020 or 2024. And he's got a long political career ahead of him. There's no reason why this needs to be his only shot at running for president. He's only 44 years old. It always, I know I've mentioned this before, but it always kind of surprises me a little bit, or when I'm reminded of that. It's like, the two Cubans, they're both 44 years old, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. Rubio could easily pass for 34. He's got very boyish features. He's very youthful looking, which I think works against him, actually, in this case, because he's running to be leader of the free world. You don't want to look like a kid, necessarily. That's why Bill Clinton was about the same age when he ran for president in 92. And when his hair started getting more and more gray, there was a lot of speculation that he was actually dyeing his hair gray to look, because people associate gray hair with wisdom and whatnot and experience. And, that's part of what goes with age. And, Marco Rubio has no gray hair and he looks much younger than he is. Versus, of course, then you've got Ted Cruz, also 44, who seems like he's not 10 years younger, but 10 years older than he actually is. He sort of comes across as this stodgy old conservative. It's like, wow, that guy's only 44? He just seems so much older. So it's kind of weird. But Rubio's got a long career. He's going to have more opportunities to run. If he gets out before Florida, he doesn't risk losing big in Florida. He might not only lose, he might lose big in Florida. And that's what, this is my prediction. If he stays in, I believe he comes in second in Florida. There was even a rumor, because Trump will win. There was even a rumor at one point, and I don't think this has come to fruition, but there was a rumor that Rick Scott, Republican governor of Florida, was considering endorsing Trump. How humiliating. If Rick Scott decides to make that move before the Florida primary, how humiliating for Marco Rubio would that be? Has Jeb even come out yet and endorsed Rubio? I'm not sure he has. I can't remember if he has or not. Some thought Chris Christie might, and then he decided to endorse Trump. So the calculus being, Rubio's got to decide, should he get out now? Or is it a better bet to stay in and risk it? If he stays in and loses Florida, he is really severely damaged going into the future. It's going to be really hard to get people to donate in 2020 or 2024 if he chokes in Florida in 2016. On the other hand, if he wins in Florida, if he stays in and he wins it, then what he has to do, it doesn't change anything ultimately. Trump is going to be the nominee no matter what. So even if Rubio stays in and wins, what he then has to do is that'll look great for him, but he'll then have to get out at the next available opportunity. So in other words, he can win Florida. Great. He looks stronger. And then he loses the next primary or two primaries and then says, okay, I don't see a path to the nomination at this point. I'm getting out. So at least he will have had the victory in Florida and then can get out and doesn't look so bad. But if he stays in and loses, he looks bad. And then the other part of the calculus is, does he look better or worse if he gets out before Florida? He could get out before Florida and not risk it, and in theory stay looking strong, but some might perceive that as weak. Some might look at Rubio then and say he got out before Florida? He wasn't willing to risk Florida? Okay. And that might damage him. So I don't know. But the article that's up on CNN.com right now says some Rubio advisors say get out before Florida. Let me read this quickly. A battle is being waged within Florida Senator Marco Rubio's campaign about whether he should even remain in the Republican presidential race ahead of his home state primary on March 15th. Rubio himself is bullish on his odds of winning the critical primary, despite some advisors who are less hopeful and believe a loss there would damage him politically in both the short and long term. Publicly, the campaign is maintaining they're still a contender in this race, touting a Sunday win in Puerto Rico's primary that delivered Rubio 23 delegates. I must correct myself then. I did not realize that. I was mistaken when I said that Rubio hadn't won any contest anywhere. He won in Puerto Rico. I thought that Puerto Rico, I wonder if they moved up. If I'm not mistaken, Puerto Rico used to be later. And the only reason I thought that was because I seem to recall in 2008, when it was Obama versus Hillary for the Democrats, and Hillary was hanging in there longer than she probably needed to, but it seems like one of the primaries she won toward the end before she finally got out was Puerto Rico. I might be remembering that wrong, but so Rubio won Puerto Rico, but privately, and that's 23 delegates, it's not insignificant. But privately, the campaign is having a debate about whether he should remain in the mix, even for his home state of Florida's primary. One source familiar with the discussion said, quote, he doesn't want to get killed in his home state. A poor showing would be a risk and hurt his political future, unquote. Alex Connarton, Rubio's communication director, said the report of such an internal debate is 100% false. This is fiction, he told CNN's Wolf Blitzer on the Situation Room. Well, of course he's going to say that. He can't possibly acknowledge that they're thinking about folding now. He's probably just lying. He added, quote, I was sitting in a senior staff meeting planning out next week's schedule when I saw this report suddenly air, and I came back racing across town to correct it, unquote. For the latest, never mind, that's an ad. Conan pointed to the fact that Rubio appears to be closing in on GOP frontrunner Donald Trump's lead in Florida. Well, that's pretty telling right there. He's closing in on Trump's lead in Florida. He's not already leading in the polls in his home state. That's not good. A Monmouth poll released Monday shows Rubio behind Trump, 38 to 30%. A Quinnipiac poll released 2 weeks ago put Rubio behind Trump by a wider margin, 44 to 28. Most of the senator's advisors agree he does not have a path to the nomination, and some are advising him to get out ahead of the March 15th primary. Sources within the campaign also say the pressure will only continue to mount following an expected disappointing showing Tuesday when voters in Michigan, Mississippi, Hawaii, and Idaho make their picks in the GOP primary. Again, remember this article went up yesterday ahead of when the polls closed. So we know now Rubio did pretty poorly yesterday. He didn't win anything. One campaign source said, quote, not going to have a great day is an understatement, unquote. Weighing the costs. There are two lines of thought within the campaign, getting out before Florida and hanging in there. On the one hand, some advisors are warning that if Rubio does poorly in his home state, it could not only hurt his presidential campaign, but also his future politically. including a potential gubernatorial run in 2018 or a chance to be on the ticket as a vice presidential candidate. One prominent supporter said, quote, Cruz won his home state. If Rubio can't win his, that's a problem, unquote. But others within the campaign are urging Rubio to stay in the race, predicting a better than expected finish in Florida. Rubio's victory for his Senate seat against the governor makes him optimistic he can come from behind, said one source close to the campaign. The senator also believes his experience in the state translate to a superior ground game and infrastructure than that of his competitors. The latter line of thinking seems to be winning for the moment, but a particularly awful Tuesday could change the rationale. Well, it hasn't changed it yet. I mean, he did have an awful Tuesday, and at this moment, he appears to still be in. There is more to this. There's more to this article if you want to check it out. It is up on CNN.com. But that's the latest in regard to Rubio. Meanwhile, and this is this is interesting that the establishment seems to be finally coalescing around Ted Cruz. One Bush loyalist who remained anonymous, according to this article in Politico, said that Ted is the only possibility to stop Trump. Of course, they've done this all wrong from the beginning. They should have gotten behind John Kasich. I've said it before a million times. Kasich, to me, the least repulsive of the current Republicans running, and the most competent, the smartest guy in the room, the most experienced in both Washington and as an executive, as governor of his own state. By far, by miles, the best candidate on the right. So, of course, they don't support him. Kasich hasn't won anything, won't win anything. He couldn't win Michigan. He was optimistic about Michigan, couldn't win it. He probably will win Ohio. He's very popular in his home state, but that's not going to make any difference. Kasich also, though, interestingly enough, has not directly attacked Trump. And Trump only attacked Kasich one time that I can remember at one of the early debates. So maybe Kasich will be the VP pick. But all this talk about a contested convention and a floor fight, as much as the political junkie in me wants to see that and would be fascinated by that, I mean, it really would be an amazing thing to observe. I really don't think it's going to happen. I think at some point they're just going to have to, as I always say, the Republican establishment that doesn't like Trump, they're going to have to embrace the horror and lean into it and just go with it and try to make the best of it. Because as disastrous as a Trump nomination may be in the general election, a contested convention is also disastrous because their option is Ted Cruz. And Ted Cruz stands no more chance of beating Hillary Clinton, or Bernie Sanders for that matter, in a general election than Trump does. And Ted Cruz also reviled by the Republican establishment for different reasons, but they don't like him much better. And here's the thing. You have Trump, who won big in Mississippi yesterday, by the way. Big victory for Trump in the Mississippi primary. Mississippi, where it's obviously in the red states in the South, you've got a big evangelical Christian vote. So the obvious choice for these Southern evangelical Christians would be Ted Cruz. Evangelical Christian, he's a Southerner, he's from Texas. And they went with Trump anyway. So what does that tell you? Again, Trump is unstoppable. He's going to be the nominee. That is a done deal. There is no undoing that. With that much energy and support behind him, as repulsive as some of us may find it, if there is a contested convention and that results in a Ted Cruz nomination, there's going to be so much anger among the Republican electorate. You might as well just, again, I would say with that scenario, congratulations in advance, President-elect Hillary Clinton. There's just no way. Look, we're kind of, to some extent, we seem to be watching the Republican Party just self-destruct in front of us with what's going on right now. Doesn't mean they won't rebound. They always rebound. Personally, as someone who hates the two-party system, I would like to see both parties self-destruct simultaneously, and then we can start electing independents and people who aren't bought and paid for. But that's a pipe dream. They look like they're self-destructing. They'll rebound, I guess, maybe. Although they're not good at learning. The Republicans are not good at learning certain lessons. After the 2012 campaign, when Romney lost, a lot of Republicans were saying, well, we need to figure out a way to reach out to Hispanics and stop alienating Hispanics if we want to win back the White House. Hispanics are the largest growing demographic in this country. And we need to stop talking about building walls and deporting everybody. And there was a lot of that self-reflection and self-awareness after they lost in 2012. And that lasted for a few weeks. And then it was right back to talking about building walls and deporting everybody. Oh, and we're going to make it nearly impossible in some states for you to get an abortion, too. Don't forget that. So they don't learn, and they haven't learned. And clearly the voters aren't interested in learning because they've chosen to nominate a Republican candidate who talks about building walls and deporting people. So there is no good option here. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said the other day, basically said, we're going to lose. We're going to lose big. And, there's really not much we can do about it at this point. Oh, we had a caller, but now we have a dial tone. Someone was just trying to call into the show. Perhaps it was someone from the Rubio campaign calling to reassure us that Marco's in it. Little Marco, as Trump called him, is in it for the long haul. We'll see if our caller calls back. Maybe he just lost his connection there. But so there are no good options for the Republicans. But the establishment keeps creeping toward Cruz, as Katie Gluck wrote in this article from Politico. This went up this morning. It says, Republican elites are begrudgingly embracing Ted Cruz and hanging Marco Rubio out to dry. Panicked at Donald Trump's dominance and dismayed by Rubio's continued inability to do anything about it, some top Republican power brokers are turning to Cruz, putting aside their policy and personal misgivings to back the candidate that they now openly label as their best hope to stop Trump's GOP takeover. And we have a call. Hi, welcome to Unleashed. Who's on the line?
Hey, Matt, it's Don again. How you doing?
Don, hi. Good. How are you?
Yeah, I haven't talked to you in a while. I just wanted to give my 2 cents. Very, very interested, Matt. I'm an independent like you, and we pretty much think alike when it comes to politics. But the first time in my life, I had to vote Republican.
Yeah.
And no, not for Trump. I went with Kasich.
Good for you. Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, he's the brightest one out of the bunch of them. But
yeah,
the only thing I'm going to disagree with you on is you've been predicting, and so have I, for months. That it's going to be Trump and Hillary. But I think when Trump is nominated, people like a train wreck. People that don't follow politics, they're just voting for him just because, I think. And I think Trump's going to get it, and I hope not, but
yeah,
that's what I think is going to happen, bud.
It could be. I mean, I think it's going to be Hillary, but, there is always that specter, too, with Hillary, that specter of scandal. You never know with the Clintons what might come up. But then again, nothing seems to stick to them. But that would be helpful to Trump, certainly. But no, I'm sticking with I think it's going to be Hillary, but I don't think it's impossible that Trump wins. But
I hope you're right, because I'll be honest with you, I liked Hillary up until these scandals and stuff, and I really don't trust her now. So I was telling my wife, I don't know what I'm going to do when it comes down to her and Trump.
Yeah,
I'll write your name in or something, or burn him or whatever.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting third party again, like I did last time. I'll probably, if Gary Johnson is the Libertarian nominee, I'll vote for him. I try to support independence as much as possible, but truth is too, I think New Hampshire is pretty much a blue state at this point. So Hillary will most likely carry New Hampshire, but with Trump, everything's a wild card. So who knows?
Yeah, this is a really weird election. It's unbelievable. It's like it's blowing my mind.
Yeah. Oh, it's we live in exciting times. That's for sure. It's who would have predicted this? I mean, thinking back to 2012, who would have imagined that in 2016 we'd be seeing what we're seeing now? Donald Trump as not only the presumptive Republican nominee, but this really sort of seemingly unhinged version of Donald Trump who just says a lot of crazy stuff, and he's like Godzilla wandering into the power lines. Every time he wanders into the power lines and they spark, it doesn't kill him. It makes him stronger. It's incredible.
It's like I tell my buddies when I talk to them, it's like, if he was sitting in my living room, I'd like him. I think it would be funny, but
right.
I don't want someone that acts like he's the biggest blowhard I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And if the man does lie,
yep.
I mean, yeah, it's funny. If he wasn't running for president, it would be funny. It'd be like me running for president. I shouldn't,
Yeah. Well, I'd vote for you over Trump.
All right, I just wanted to give you my 2 cents, Matt.
All right, Don. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Call anytime.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, take care. Don is a longtime viewer and caller. Although, yeah, Don, please, I'd love to hear from you more often. That'd be great. Yeah, Don, as he said, he voted for John Kasich in the Republican primary in New Hampshire, and it's just stunning to me. It's like I remember in 2012 watching these Republican debates, which at the time I thought were the greatest television in history, the 2012 debates. You had all these colorful characters like Michelle Bachmann and Herman Cain and Rick Santorum. It's just great stuff. I had no idea what we'd be in for 4 years later. I at the time, I didn't think, nothing's ever going to top this. I was absolutely wrong. But I remember former Utah Governor John Huntsman was one of the people on that stage in these debates. And I just kept looking at Huntsman going, this guy would be a phenomenal general election candidate. He could beat Obama. Plus, Huntsman had served in the Obama administration as the U.S. ambassador to China. We'd never seen that before, as far as I know, in history, where you have a debate, a general election debate, and one of the people in that debate, the challenger in the debate, happened to be a former cabinet member of the current president. That would have been fascinating, that dynamic. So perhaps somewhat selfishly, I wanted them to nominate Huntsman for that reason. But Huntsman, just solid guy, very, very smart, had the right experience. He had that executive experience. Because that's one thing I agree with Chris Christie on, when he would say during the debates, Rubio and Cruz would be bickering about something, and so the two Cubans are going at it, and Christie would say, this is the problem with these guys. I'm a governor, I'm an executive, I have to make decisions and get things done. I'm not a member of a debate club where you just talk and don't resolve anything. And he played that card a few times, did Chris Christie, and I think he was right about that. Yeah, Huntsman would have been a fantastic candidate. And of course, John Huntsman would do extremely poorly in the primaries and in the polls and had to get out. I think he might have been even the first one to drop out. Just a fantastic candidate. So, of course, they weren't interested in him because he wasn't throwing out the red meat that some of these other people were. Plus, I think the establishment had kind of already settled on Romney. But that's what I think of when I look at Kasich. I think of Huntsman. John Kasich, phenomenal. He could beat Hillary, and he would appeal to independents. And even, he might even peel off some Democrats. It's funny. There was a time, by the way, that my own perception of John Kasich was that he was this really kind of right-wing conservative guy. But the way the party has changed, it's like now he comes off, he's probably not much different than he ever was, but now I perceive him as this sort of moderate, reasonable, not overly ideological, really smart guy who I think would be very competent as, and I would be reasonably comfortable with him as commander-in-chief. So, of course, he can't possibly be the Republican nominee. Why do that? Why do the obvious? But it's, no, I mean, look, it's going to be Trump. And like I said in this article, let's see, Austin Barber, who's a prominent Mississippi GOP operative, said that Cruz seems to be the only guy who's got any momentum and is probably the best situated to stop Trump. Let's see, we have another call. Hi, welcome to Unleashed. Who's on the line?
Mein Führer, I can walk!
I'm sorry, who is this?
Matt Connarton, how are you?
Good, how are you? Who is this?
I heard you talking about John.
Oh, it's John Hopwood. I didn't recognize your voice at first.
The opportunity to be on your show, and but I heard you talking about John Huntsman.
Yes.
I've actually crossed, after covering the 2012 primary for Yahoo News,
Yeah.
after interviewing him and covering him 5 times, I crossed over and voted in the Republican primary for Huntsman.
No kidding.
Now, he came in 3rd in the New Hampshire primary, and it was expected that he'd come in 2nd, but Ron Paul came in 2nd,
Yeah.
and that effectively ended his campaign.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is his campaign, including its slogan, was based on John McCain's campaign. In 2008, Huntsman had broke with his fellow Mormon, Romney, and endorsed McCain, who went on to win Utah.
Yeah.
It was a big thing, but McCain double-crossed him, and at Central High School, I was there, he endorsed Romney.
Oh, okay.
That's what did him in. The problem with Huntsman is Republicans used to be you always wait your turn.
Right.
Romney comes in 2nd, then in 2012. So possibly, many people think that he went too early.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course he was probably positioning himself for 2016. But I know for a fact, because I was there inside the barn, like at St. A's and everything.
Yeah.
Thing that he was done in by his comment that when he said that we can't turn our back on science, meaning global warming.
Right.
On election eve in November, all the crackpots that said they'd never vote for Romney, of course, were going to vote for him.
Yeah.
We were all lined up to go to the Verizon Center, where Romney had his last event. And I actually said I was a John Huntsman supporter, so I wouldn't get lynched. I was going to vote for Obama.
Yeah.
And they denounced him, oh, he's not a Republican. And they actually mentioned global warming and all that.
Yeah.
That was like a fatal mistake he made.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing this become unleashed. You can go on from there.
Yeah.
It's just amazing that this guy that would have won Democratic votes, it would be an excellent president or a prime minister in a parliamentary system.
Yeah.
He's just unceremoniously canned.
Oh, yeah.
Making that comment. But also McCain stabbed him in the back for whatever reason,
Yeah, I didn't realize that dynamic of it. That's interesting. Wow.
That's politics. One thing, think about this, and I'll hang up, mein Führer. Think about that a lot of the people, Bernie has a great appeal to poorer working class whites.
Yeah.
He draws a lot of strength from them, and they're constrained by their Democratic registration for voting for him. But in November, a lot of those are going to cross over, like the Reagan Democrats, and vote for Trump, because Trump appeals to that demographic too.
You think so? So you think he has? You think he has a shot? You agree with Don?
Oh, Trump will be the next president.
See, I didn't realize you felt that way. You think he'll beat Hillary?
That's because when you're visiting my show, the anarchy gets out of hand. Take care, Matt.
All right, John, thank you so much. So the great John Hopwood from Ward 13 with John Hopwood. And we're about out of time. So on that note, we'll wrap up and we'll have both. We should have both Ward 13 and this program up and available tonight to watch on demand on YouTube on the IPM Nation channel. So you can see also if you want our discussion on John's show earlier. We were talking about, we had Bonnie Wright with us for the full hour, and also Tom Massengale and talking about GMOs and a little bit of politics and all that. So so that's always a good time. Also, too, really quickly before we wrap up, I want to say hi to Sandy, who I ran into yesterday. She's a viewer, and apparently, she watches this show and Gary's show and some of the other shows like Ward 13 when I'm on there and some other programs. And we had a really nice conversation. She recognized me at the post office. And apparently her family watches too. It's not just her. So I wanted to say hi to Sandy. Thank you for the support and the conversation yesterday. Sandy is friends with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. They go to church together. Well, I don't think they literally go to church together, but they go to the same church, and so they know each other through the church. But yeah, Sandy was very nice and enjoys the programs. And so Sandy, again, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And thank you to your family who watch us too. That's great. So so we are out of time. So I want to remind everybody, of course, I almost said the television edition, the radio edition of Unleashed, you can hear 5 nights a week on IPM Nation 2, one of our live channels on IPM Nation. Tomorrow night on the show, Thursday night, Brian Ogstad, who is an economist, will be Skyping into the show. We do carry Brian's podcast on IPM Nation, and he was on with me 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. But he's going to be coming back tomorrow night on the show. I have some questions to ask him, economics related, as I am no expert. I'm not even good at math. I failed college accounting the first time I took it. I had to retake it. So I have lots of questions for any time I can talk to an economist. And I know it's not an exact science. Obviously, there's many different economic theories, but I do have some things I want to discuss with Brian and get his perspective on. So that should be very interesting on Unleashed tomorrow night. And of course, if you're watching live on Wednesday, I will be back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. And I understand that John Heichel will be joining us, and that's wonderful. Always nice to see John. And Jack Kimball will also be on the show to talk about the situation with Jerry DeLemus having been taken in by the FBI. So there's much to discuss. So that's it for now. I got to go. I'll talk at y'all later. Thanks, everybody.